Good evening, friends. Tonight we travel to Philadelphia, where basketball lives in row houses and echoes off limestone, where rivalries share subway lines and history books, where a chant is not just shouted, it is inherited. We're stepping into St. Joseph's University, into Hagan Arena, into a tradition so stubborn, so beloved, so unmistakably Philly, that it became a living proverb. The hawk will never die. There are mascots, and then there is the hawk, wings spread, head high, arms beating in unbroken rhythm from pre-game warmups until the final horn. No shortcuts, no breaks, not even through timeouts. The hawk flaps, and flaps, and keeps flapping. A small contradiction made visible. Wings that must be exhausted, yet a symbol that refuses exhaustion. On this floor, that motion is more than ritual. It is the heartbeat of a program, a visible commitment to persistence, devotion, and the idea that tradition is action, not just memory. The students do not merely watch the hawk, they near it. They stand longer, sing louder, learn the cadence of a building that is smaller than some, but somehow feels larger because belief expands its walls. Let's begin with what the outside world often misunderstands. They think the flapping is a gimmick, a cute quirk, a meme. But in this city, where the Big Five taught generations how to love college hoops and hold grudges with charm, the flapping is a covenant. It says, we will be relentless, even if you're bigger, even if you're ranked, even if you walk in with a televised glow and a national following. We will be here, present, organized, and unwilling to yield the narrative. Hagan Arena has its own grammar. It's not a cavern, it's a chorus room. The corners matter. The bleachers press close enough for you to see eyes sharpen on a defensive switch. St. Joseph's isn't trying to overwhelm you with a wall of decibels, though they certainly can. They'd rather guide the moment, point it, shape it. The best student sections, the ones that live forever in stories, know how to time their belief. And that is the lesson here, timing. The hawk's wings don't hammer indiscriminately. They arc. They settle into tempo. They communicate. It's time now. When a young guard feels the weight of his first conference start, the cadence says, breathe. We do this together. When a visiting veteran trots over to the sideline smiling at his bench, the cadence says, smile. Now, we're still here in 5 minutes, and in 10, and at the end. If you have stood in that bowl on a cold night, a Friday that could have been anything else, you've seen how the ritual draws people inward. Alumni who remember the Palestra days, students who learned the chants from older siblings, families who chose this as their one night out. Here, tradition is not just a highlight reel of retired numbers and heroic pull-ups. Tradition is the discipline of the present tense. Stand, support, sustain. There is, of course, the famous line, "The hawk will never die." It reads like defiance. It also reads like gratitude. Programs are fragile, dependent on recruiting swings, on coaches who find the right fit, on keeping pace with an arms race of facilities. The Hawks' promise, never die, is not arrogance, it is stewardship. It says to every class that passes through, keep the wings moving, because this thing belongs to all of us, and none of us alone. I want to talk about the feel of a St. Joseph's possession when the building believes defense is about to travel. It begins quietly, a lean forward, an index finger to the lips, not to enforce silence, but to call for focus. Then comes the footwork on the baseline, the chest-out on-ball stance, and the whisper that turns into a word, that turns into a chant, that turns into a wall. If you're wearing road colors, your first option is suddenly late, your second is suddenly crowded, and your third, well, your third is a pass that arrives a half second after the window closes. The scoreboard does not record half seconds of hesitation, but the game lives and dies on them. The Hawk does not block a shot. The Hawk buys that half set for the defender who does. The story here is not one coach, not one era, not one star, though St. Joseph's has had all of that and more. The story is the inheritance of effort, passed down like a family recipe, updated with each generation's spices. One year, the students might engineer a new call and response. Another year, they might rewrite an old chant to fit the roster's swagger. The constant is the promise. If the team commits to playing with purpose, the building commits to making purpose louder. Philadelphia's Big Five is a neighborhood feud with civic pride at its core, and St. Joseph's is a pillar in that temple. Ask anyone who has lived it. The crosstown nights, the ones where the subway picks a side, where a late shot redraws the dining table conversation for a week, are not just about who wins. They are about who honors the game. And on that question, St. Joseph's answers with wings that refuse to rest. Let's press into the symbolism, because college basketball is theater as much as it is competition, and this program understands that good theater tells the truth. The Hawks' ceaseless motion is everything a college team wants from its culture, an outward manifestation of inner habits. Show up early, do the work, hold the line, finish the drill. If belief had a gesture, it would be those wings. You want tactics? Here's a tactical insight disguised as lore. In smaller arenas, the margin lives in repetition. Thousands of micro moments accumulate into pressure. The same defensive stance emphasized in film. The same bench cue for when to stand. The same crowd swell in a hard hedge. The same roar when a charge is drawn with feet outside the arc and chest square. St. Joseph doesn't need to reinvent intimidation. They refine it. By the 10th repetition, visiting guards begin to anticipate noise instead of reads. Anticipation is the cousin of mistakes. And then there's the human part, the reason these episodes exist. A first-year student, not yet sure where they belong on campus, learns the chants from a roommate and suddenly belongs to two communities at once, St. Joseph's and the Church of College Hoops. A senior who watched lean years and great years with equal loyalty realizes the wings are flapping for them too, for the hours they spent in bad weather waiting at the door, for the ways they sold the program to younger classmates, for showing up on nights when the world suggested 100 easier choices. If you're new to this tradition, you may wonder, is it really that profound? Are we elevating a costume and a habit into something grander than it is? Let me answer the way Philadelphia would. Plain, direct, without decoration. Yes. It is that profound, not because the act itself is complicated, because the act is simple and done faithfully over time. That's what culture is. That's what so many programs chase and so few find. Something that looks humble on the surface and turns out to be bedrock underneath. There are always test nights. A ranked visitor arrives with cameras and confidence. The first 5 minutes feel like a storm. A whistle goes against the home side, a three rims out, a layup bleeds off the glass. The temptation, in any gym, is to exhale in disappointment and let the moment drift. That is where the Hawk proves its worth. The wings do not negotiate with the moment. They keep going, and the building follows. And 6 possessions later, the game is close again, and you can feel the visitor thinking, how is this still happening? It is still happening because this place treats belief like a job description. There are other gifts this tradition gives. It teaches the program to separate noise from voice. Noise is volume without intent. Voice is meaning with timing. Noise shouts when it wants to be heard. Voice speaks when it needs to be understood. The Hawk is voice. The St. Joseph's students tuned to when to rise, when to lean into the baseline, when to bring the roof down, our voice. the game notices. It always does. And so we arrive at the lesson, the one any campus can borrow. You don't need a 1,000-piece band or a scoreboard the size of a wall. You need rituals that reward participation, standards that outlive rosters, and symbols that tell the truth about who you are. Create cues that your first years can learn in a week. Celebrate effort plays like they're game winners. And give your people a gesture, maybe not wings, but something yours that becomes shorthand for "we show up," because that is the secret of St. Joseph's. The hawk is not merely a mascot, it is a metronome. It keeps time while the program does its work. It reminds young players that the crowd is with them through dry spells and foul trouble. It reminds opponents that you cannot sprint past persistence. And it reminds a city that loves its basketball that reverence can be loud and joyful. On paper, tonight's message is simple: a student section, a small arena, a beloved figure in feathers. But if you listen closely, the message is larger. Consistency is a competitive edge. Attention is defense. And tradition, when practiced, not just praised, becomes gravity. It pulls talent, it holds standards, it bends outcomes by a possession or two. In March, that is the difference between a season that was and a season that is remembered. So when you hear the chant, when the words leap from the bleachers into the bloodstream of the game, know that you're not just hearing pride. You're hearing a promise kept. You're hearing generations of Hawks passing the wings to the next set of shoulders, one beat at a time. The clock will run. Shots will fall or float. Coaches will argue the geometry of screens and closeouts. The record book will chart wins and losses. But the wings will keep moving. And every time they do, the building learns again who it is. The Hawk will never die. That's not a slogan. That's a standard. From Hagan to the Palestra, from city blocks to campus walkways, where winter air stings your lungs and hope warms your hands. I'm Hoops Maverick, and this has been Campus Chronicles, Beyond the Game. If this story made your love for college hoops beat a little stronger, share it with your crew. Leave a quick 5-star and tell us which cathedral of noise we should visit next. Until then, box out with purpose, pass with trust, and keep your rituals alive. Hoops Maverick out.